Here we are, a company, a winery that's founded 25 years ago by Pinot enthusiasts who have evolved into creating a portfolio of luxury Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays based in Sebastopol in Sonoma. They produce appellation wines, single vineyard wines, estate wines from the West Coast most coveted cool climate vineyards. And under your amazing leadership, the winery's expanded to Oregon's Willamette Valley, and now Burgundy, producing wines that consistently embody distinctiveness of the terroirs with the unparalleled quality and sophistication. I've been reading that and rehearsing it all day to say it. It sounded really terrible, but you get the point. These guys know their Pinot Noirs and their Chardonnays, and you've been making amazing, enviable wines in California for 25 years, but now you've taken it backwards. Most Burgundy producers come to the US to plant a flag. You guys went in the opposite direction, and I think that's super exciting. And I know it's still surprising to a lot of people, especially friends here on the East Coast who aren't maybe as geeky as we are, who know they know the name Costa Brown, they know it means Pinot Noir and Chard, but they had no idea that your guys are in Burgundy. So I'm glad to talk about it in depth here tonight with you.
Excellent, me too. Yes, so it's quite an amazing story. I mean, it's amazing to think that actually right now as we speak, we're working on our 5th vintage of Burgundy. We're obviously in the sales period of only our 3rd, but it's amazing to think that we've been in it for 5 years now. It's gone by really fast. I've learned a lot. I still have a tremendous amount to learn, but it's been, to say the least, an incredible opportunity and an amazing experience to bring the Burgundy wines to Costa Brown.
So because I teach classes at every level, of amateur winemaker to super geeky master soms, it might be ridiculous to say the obvious, but I'm curious to know if my mom's out there. Probably there aren't many people outside of the wine world who can make a direct correlation between Burgundy and Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in California or anywhere around the world, knowing that the birthplace of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay is Burgundy. So like I said, it's like a reverse commute backwards. You guys are, these grapes came to California. You picked the best ones that match your terroir and make beautiful wines with them. Now you have this opportunity to go back to Burgundy and make wines there as well. It's an incredible parallel and journey, and it echoes like I think your early days in the Russian River Valley and Sonoma Coast when you were figuring out what grows best where. Clearly, you know what grows well where in Burgundy, but to have the opportunity to actually go over there and do it is pretty amazing. And I think people will be surprised to learn, despite your clearly American accent, that you are half French. Burgundian, no less.
That is. And, to be honest, I didn't even really know that until somewhat recently either in terms of the Burgundy connection. My dad is French. He was born in Paris. He immigrated to the United States when he was only two and a half years old. He moved from Paris to New York City, which is where he grew up. And my grandmother, who has recently passed away, she was born in a tiny village outside of Neuilly-Saint-Georges. And my father's uncles aunts and uncles, I should say, worked in cellars in Neuilly-Saint-Georges. So, it's this really incredible full circle moment for me personally and for my family. In fact, on one of our first, on the early days of the project, I was able to bring my dad out. We spent the trip together. He came and helped. He helped work in the cellars together, but we also visited my grandmother's birthplace, which he had never been to. And it was about a 25-minute drive from Neuilly-Saint-Georges, a tiny little village. It didn't even have a patisserie, right? So that's kind of how small this place is. And sure, yeah, I know, exactly. But sure enough, her home was, the name of the street was her maiden name. So Jacquinot. And so, that just goes to show how old of a village is, how small of a village when you build a house on a street where there's probably only one or two other homes that, if that, you get to name it what you want. And what a better choice than one's last name. So that was neat. And my dad has also taken up a pretty awesome hobby in his retirement, staying very busy growing grapes and making wine himself. So, it's kind of fun to be doing this all together and have a familial connection to the project as well.
But Julian, was it your idea? Like, did you put that in front of, um, did you put it in front of Costa Brown first, or did it come the other way around? Like, did they draw the parallel because of your French connection?
Well, it wasn't necessarily due to that, but what I would say is that it really helped. So, Costa Brown has been talking about making wine from Burgundy for a long time. I started at Costa Brown in 2012 as an intern, um, relatively fresh out of UC Davis. I had spent a couple years living in Lake Tahoe and having a good time there, ski bumming around. And I started at Costa Brown, and there was a little bit of buzz and there was a little bit of talk about trying to make wine from Burgundy, but there was really no idea of how that would be possible. It was just more of a dream. And it was that for a long time. Now, around 2015 or so, that was when the production staff made the first pilgrimage to Burgundy, and we went there to just experience it and just to see it and to learn it and visit our coopers, our partners that are building our barrels and things like that. And we were just completely amazed by the history, the tradition, the commitment. I'm still amazed by the commitment that the French have to wine making. And so
Was what
that was,
Julian? Be honest. Was there like any resistance at all on the French side? Like, what are you guys thinking? Are you crazy? Like,
well,
wanted to make
yeah,
wine
I
with us?
mean, a little bit. So we when we first thought of asking the question, when the time came where it was like, what, let's do it. It's time. We think we can actually make a run at this. We were very, very nervous and anxious to see the initial reaction. And to our surprise, calling some people that I had become very close with over the years, they were very receptive to the idea. When we said, hey, we're interested in making wine in Burgundy, can you help us? Can you support us? Where do we start, right? And that was the very first serious conversation. And the whole entire future of this project kind of hinged on that moment, right? On that first phone call. And it was welcomed with, some degree of, you know, yeah, there was some interesting pause there, but at the end of it, there was like, that's a very interesting idea, and why not, right? And
Right.
so,
Clearly, your
and I think,
reputation preceded you guys. I mean, they know what you're doing here. They know the quality, the level of quality you're doing here. And I mean, if they did their homework on their side, let's say, anyone who looks at what you've done and how you've grown grapes in at Costa Brown, you've taken the Burgundy model and applied it here. It's not like you're freewheeling it. You're totally paying homage to them in your site selection, clone selection, and everything else that comes with it.
absolutely. And that was what it was all about. I mean, it was about, honoring everything that is about everything that has to do with Burgundy and just trying to be a part of it in some small way. And that's what we're doing. And we're not, coming in forcefully, or we're being very, very respectful and very, very humble. And we know that the opportunity that we have and that we've been given is a privilege, and we're doing everything we can to honor that and truly produce wines, of authenticity. And I think we've done a great job of that so far.
Tell me this, Julian, when people ask what what the like the negotiation system is, like I've been asked this a million times by American wine drinkers because they don't understand the concept and how it might apply to what you're doing or not doing by making wine in Burgundy. Can you quickly define the negotiant model?
Yes. So the negociant model is essentially the system in which wine producers who don't own their own vineyards purchase either grapes or must or wine. So in Burgundy, what let's say actually in California, we would be considered negociants as well. We do have estate vineyards. We have about 40 to 50% of our grapes on a given year actually come from our estate vineyards, but we're also purchasing a lot of grapes. And in Burgundy, it's the same thing, but a lot of the material, the raw material that gets actually purchased is not always grapes. A lot of times it's must, which is basically the red grapes or the white grapes that have been processed in some way. So in the case of white grapes, it'd be pressed juice. and red grapes that have already been destemmed, to maintain the integrity of the product. They sell you the must. Oftentimes, the way that it's sold is as vinified wine. So the growers actually have little wineries. They have, little agreements where maybe multiple growers will make wine at a single facility, and they will produce the wine, vinify it, and then they'll sell it as the vinified wine. And so we participate in all three of those means of acquiring wine. And over the years, our goal has been to position ourselves in a better position to buy more grapes, because we feel like that's our best chance to have the greatest amount of control. But we also realize that, buying vinified wine, it also has its advantages, and it's actually a really, really neat system, and it's very, very different from California. So, yeah, that's mainly the Negos model. But and it's a way of describing anybody who produces wines with grapes that they don't own the property that produces the grapes.
Fantastic. So
Yeah.
we're talking a lot about grapes. We're talking about wine. Why don't we taste the wine? You want to get started? I think you said you wanted to start with the Volnay
Yes.
first. We'll go from south to north.
Yes. So, as mentioned at the beginning of the show, there it is, our 2022 Volnay. We are selling our 2022 vintage wine right now. We are on our third release, and the Volnay, the Pommard, and the Bon Premier Cru, which are going to be the first three wines that we taste today, those have been our three wines that we've had each year. And Volnay is the southernmost appellation that we are producing from. And, between Volnay and Pommard, it is a very, very close to one another. These two towns are less than a mile apart. And the vineyards are, Volnay is a very, very steep appellation. And Pommard it's got some rolling, definitely has some hillsides, but Volnay is the real steep side. And this wine is gorgeous. The 2022 vintage was spectacular. It's going down as one of the best vintages in a long time, not just recent memory, but a long, long time. And the Volnay is beautiful. It's traditionally, Volnays are known to be more delicate, a little bit more elegant, a little bit softer, a little bit more, velvety. And I think that this wine encompasses all of those characteristics. It also has a really vibrant energy to the wine too, which I really find to be a nice compliment.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous nose, man.
Yeah.
Very different. I mean, side by side with the Pommard, as you just said, like this is where like terroir, is writ large, where you see two places so close together. And this is what I say to Americans all the time. Terroir is such a not only a difficult word for us to say easily without feeling affected, but also that it's not an easy concept to embrace. And people say, really, if I grew on this side of my yard and that side of my yard, could it be different? So I'm like, well, there's a garage over there blocking the wind on that side of the yard, but over there it's downward slope towards the blah, blah, and like all those little factors that can come into play where rain might hit more, drainage, sun, shade, wind. It changes everything. So it's not even like you're saying these are a mile apart, but you could be in the same vineyard, on different sides of a red brick path down the middle. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how it comes down.
Yeah, exactly.
They smell very different. By the way, I want to say cheers to you, brother. Cheers.
Cheers, Anthony. Good to see you, man. Yeah, I agree. Terroir is an interesting concept, and it takes some time to understand it and to kind of believe in it, but there's a tremendous amount of truth in it. I mean, terroir can be covered up by other things that can mask the identity of the source, but wines that are made in a truly authentic way, and the wine, the vigneron, the growers, the winemakers are all pushing and pulling in the same way to produce a wine that really speaks to its where it was grown. That takes a lot of effort by a lot of different people, and Burgundy is an exceptional example of terroir, and Pinot Noir in general is the pinnacle variety that showcases terroir. And what makes Burgundy very interesting is it is an incredible example of plots and villages and appellations that are so tightly packed next to each other, and they can show such different expressions of Pinot Noir. And this is a very, very good example because the Volnay, a little bit more voluptuous, a little bit more silky, softer, elegant. And then the Pommard is much more structured and a little bit more of a forceful wine with broader shoulders and tannin and, you know, much more power. So, and again, like you mentioned, the center of the town is perhaps a mile apart, but I mean, this is like so much of the same place, yet they produce such different wines.
Do you want to taste the Pomard next, or let's have one more sip and see? I want to talk. I want to go back. I do want to rewind a minute before we go on. So when you said this is like you've been, you know, this was in play for 5 years. 2018, Duckhorn, the portfolio, Duckhorn portfolio acquires Costa Brown, providing you guys with new resources, logistics expertise, all that you needed to pursue this dream. In 2020, you finally, you know, you successfully debuted the first vintage with a Pommard, a Volnay, a Meursault, and a Gevrey Chambertin. How was that first vintage? How rough or how easy was it to pull together, and has it been going since in subsequent 3 vintages?
Well, the first vintage was clearly the most exciting. You know, it was an incredible year to be engaging in such a project. But you know, the reality is once we had the connections, once we had the introductions, once we had the agreement in place, the real heavy lifting came from a lot of people who worked behind the scenes in the Duckhorn portfolio, and they really deserve a lot of the credit, if not the majority of the credit, because we're pulling off something that's really never been done before. I mean, we are producing wine in Burgundy, importing it, and then bottling it at Costa Brown. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And then selling it, you know, mostly direct to consumer, to all of you. So that's a really, really challenging set of fire hoops to jump through and around and under, and the Duckhorn portfolio provided that support. And I thought that it was a really beautiful moment that that kind of, it was like what each of those two, you know, sides can do for one another, right? And so that was really cool. That was a culmination of two really powerful and you know, forward-thinking organizations coming together and making something
Right.
impossible happen. So 2020 was an incredible year as well, and it was a great year for us to start. In fact, it was a hot vintage in Burgundy. It was a dry vintage. It was a very early vintage. And the wines came out very concentrated, a lot of fruit, packing a lot of flavor, and the wines are really, really good. And they were actually, I would even dare to say, they were more relatable to a California style of Pinot Noir coming out of Burgundy, one of the most relatable, you know, that I can think of in a long time. So it was a good foray. It was a good time for us to do this. Now, I have talked to a lot of people who have purchased wine from us, and they said, well, we haven't even opened them yet. And, you know, those people are very patient, and I love that. But I would say definitely try them. I mean, the 2020 Pommard is such an incredible wine. I've been enjoying that wine already for a couple of years. The Bon Premier Cru is incredible. I mean, we had a dinner at the winery this past spring, and we had, you know, large formats of the Gevrey Chambertin and some other wines, and they were all incredible. So while Burgundy is known to age really, really well, and we could maybe talk about that later if there's time, that should not hold you back from trying the 2020 and the 2021s. You know, one of the interesting things about Burgundy also is that they deal with a lot of variation from year to year with the climate. And so 2020 was hot and dry and produced wines that were really powerful and dark in color. 2021 was a really, really challenging year with a lot of frost. And so those wines were a little bit, the resulting wine was a bit more traditional in terms of what Burgundy style wine might be, which is a little bit more dried and red fruit, crunchy, you know, a little bit more perceived acidity, you know, nice firm tannins. It definitely will be age worthy, but really also a very, very nice wine. So, and then the 2022s, I think are the Goldilocks, right? They are fruit forward. They've got lots of power. They have finesse. They've got fruit. It's a bit of everything, and I think that the 2022s are probably the best of the three that we've produced so far. And you know, the one thing I find to be somewhat, I think, actually in the end, very special about producing wine in Burgundy is that we have really, really good partners who are doing an excellent job on our behalf, and we're communicating daily, and they're doing things the way we want it done. But really, our purpose in this project is to bring wines that are reflective of the terroir and the year, right? And Burgundy does such a good job of that you know these wines are what the season brought us, and so 2022 is an incredible year for that.
So Julian, if so when we go back to the first release in 2020 where you had a Gevrey and a Meursault, for example, does that mean that every year you might produce it from a different appellation, or are we locked in right now at these five?
Well, it's a good question. So year one, we were, we definitely set out to make those five wines. After the frost in 2021, that really changed the whole market, and it's really changed it ever since.
Really?
And so, yeah, and the Gevrey and Meursault in particular, the whites got hit particularly hard in 2021, and so the inventory just was like close to zero. So at the end of the day, Meursault and Gevrey, we just could not find any opportunities to acquire any grapes, must, or wine on the market, and so we had to, we continued to search, but at the end of the day, it's just outrageous. And the Volnay, Pommard, Bon Premier Cru, those are excellent wines, and they've been a staple in our lineup. And we have shifted our focus to wines that we think that we can produce year in and year out, a little bit more sustainably, and that now includes the Nuits Saint Georges as well as the Chablis Premier Cru. And so this is the lineup that we feel really comfortable, because we like to be consistent. We don't want to be releasing, a new set of wines every year, and we feel like we have a good shot at a consistent release with this set of wines.
Fantastic. I remember how excited I was when we did our first Pinot talks right before COVID, and we were talking up how this was a new project for you guys, and I couldn't wait to start tasting them. So
yeah,
the 2020 sold out, I think, in 2 days, right? Didn't it? It was like an instant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And before we wrap up today, you'll tell us about the membership model and how anyone who's on here can sign up if you're not already a member to order for next year.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. So it's a good thing you brought that up, because in 2020, as excited and optimistic as we were with this whole endeavor, this whole adventure, we also we weren't really sure what the response would be from our members, because we do have a sales model that's very unique, and that you become a member, and then once you become a member, we have several releases throughout the year that we sell our wine in. So they're short periods, sometimes 7 to 14 days, and the Burgundy release, we had no idea what type of interest really our members would have in the wine. And we were blown away, because we did on year one a first come, first serve. And we were blown away at the interest, and the wine sold out in 2 days. And that was incredible. So now we have our membership of folks who we know are interested in the wine, and that has been the base of our allocation model. So those people are the ones who are getting the allocation, and over time, more and more people get introduced to the series. So if you do sign up, then you can have an offer next year, which will be a year from today, because we did just open our Burgundy series offer today. So I encourage you to come visit the website, costabrown.com, and you can find a place to sign up from there.
I just thought of a question that might cause trouble. I should have asked it to you guys offline, but here's a question. Julian, if people come to the winery, can they taste the Burgundy?
Yes, we're working on a series, and we have like a portfolio tasting that we're experimenting with right now, which would include some of the Burgundy wines.
Okay.
So yes, and just so everyone knows, we love to host people. Now is a great time to come. Call us in advance, email us, and we have limited availability. It's kind of like a restaurant that only has 5 or 6 tables, and we serve, only 2 meals a day. But so there's limited seating. But call us, and we can get your reservation. We'd love to have you come here, check out the whole winery. We have a really awesome tour that walks through the winery, and when there's things going on, we show you under the hood, and just you get your hands in the fermenters and everything. So please do come by.
Fantastic. All right, let's grab that Pomard.
Yes, let's do it.
All right, so.
Mm. Yeah, so the Pomard, I have to admit, has been my sleeper favorite every year. It's becoming the wine that, I always have a hard time responding to the question, "What's your favorite wine?" Because I could really go on and name a lot of favorites, but the Pomard has, I think, over delivered every single time. I think it's just such a fun wine. It's got an excellent, amazing reputation, obviously going back hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years as a village that produces incredibly structured wines that age for a long time. And I think that this wine is no different from that. So loving the Pomard. What do you think?
I was going, before we came on, I was going back and forth between the Pomard and the Volnay. I was initially seduced immediately by the Volnay because it's so much more approachable. I'm not going to lie. I wish I had some beautiful steak free here in front of me or something, like to break, to add some fat to break it all open. But I can see what you're saying about it being a sleeper, because it takes a little more patience to sit with it. I hate the European phrase of like a wine of contemplation, but it really does apply here, where you have to sit down, you have to taste it a few times, and then let it expand, let it open, and let it grow on you. I think they're completely different wines. It's amazing. Like back to what we were saying earlier about how close they are, and so worlds apart, honestly.
Yeah. For me, next to when you have an opportunity to purchase something like Bone Premier Cru, and in 2020, a Gevrey Chambertin, and now we have a Nuit Saint Georges, all of which I think maybe on paper have stronger reputations than the Pomard. That to me is where the Pomard has stood up as being like, hey, I'm a part of this conversation too, fellas. Don't pass on me quite yet. So I love the Pomard. I think it's a real it's a cool wine. I've enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, excellent. Pomard is a really cute village. God, there's some great views that are, up on the hillside, kind of in between Pomard and Volnay, overlooking Olive Bone. It's a beautiful place to visit. In case anyone ever has a chance to go, please, please, please drive through Volnay, drive through Pomard. Cute little villages. There's almost nothing better.
Julian, should we ask for trivia here? Does anybody know what the commune or who the commune of Pomard was named after? Anybody out there? We're going to give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did anyone say Pomona? Pomona, who symbolizes the divinity of the garden and is known for its exclusive production of Pinot Noir. I thought it was a fun fact.
That is true.
Do my homework for you guys.
There you go.
And Tony Lombardi just joined. Tony Lombardi, what's up, brother? I'm trying to catch all the comments. Someone else, by the way, said that they tasted at the Healdsburg Free Wine Festival. They tasted, I don't know which Burgundy. It flew past me, but they were fooled. They thought it was so juicy and delicious. They thought it was California. But I'll scroll back later if I can, without knocking my whole setup here over.
Yeah. Well, and also the last couple of years, maybe not so much 2021, but 20 and 22. To the listeners, point, these wines are not lacking in power and concentration and fruit and flesh, right? These wines are really incredible. And, you know, I think it would take a very keen taster to really be able to identify the difference of these wines sometimes. I mean, it's let's just say it could be mistaken for one another with these warmer vintages.
Julian, a question, some just popped up. I love the Burgundy wines from KB. Just curious how you were able to make these wines in Burgundy, given how regulated it is.
Well, it's a matter of being very tidy with paperwork for one. So that is the one of the most important things in terms of integrity, right? Improving and being so sure that the authenticity of the grapes, the wine, the must is real. And they have an incredible system in France that tracks all this stuff and that are official documents that are way more regulated than what we do in the United States. And if it has certain stamps of approval or if it has certain identification numbers, it is basically an authenticated transfer of ownership, like a bill of lading that authenticates the source. And so, we basically we work within the same Negos model as everybody else. And so what we do is I go to Europe, I go to France a couple of times a year, and first we select, and work towards purchasing grapes, and we source fruit from certain vineyards, and kind of depending on what we're looking to achieve each year, we are always, leaving ourselves a little bit of flexibility. And so when we come in the winter, I will review the season's wines that were produced, and also evaluate any wines that are on the open market. It would be where we're evaluating the wines, and we would be buying the wines as a vinified product, and we're doing it through a winery that's located in Burgundy, and it goes to their cellars. We at that point will determine the rest of its aging élevage, which would be what barrels the wine would be aged in, and how much new oak and used oak, and in the case of the Chablis, stainless steel or a little bit of used oak or whatever it might be. But at that point, we're really sending the wine in a different trajectory in terms of its élevage, because that is I would say, an overlooked detail in winemaking that is so full of missed opportunities for a lot of winemakers, that they don't take care of the wine once it's in barrel because they think that the work is done. And so that's something that we're very, very dedicated to here in California, Burgundy, and in Oregon. So it is it's probably more of a straightforward process than people would think. It's just about making sure that you have all the correct documentation.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I've never explained it quite as beautifully as you just did, but I do talk about that in a lot of classes where Americans, when I say we speak French grapes, we don't realize we're speaking French. When we speak grapes, we're speaking French. Almost everything we know, apart from Riesling and Gruner and geekier grapes we can get into, all hail from France. And everyone says, "Well, how is that possible? Why?" And I said, the French were the first to codify everything. I mean, other countries were making wine before that, but they seem to be the most organized, and most of our systems still follow or at least try to emulate their AOC system. But like you said, we don't get come close to it here with the paperwork that they get into there to follow. And I think that's also, without getting political here, it's libertarian Americans would never tolerate inspectors coming in to American wineries and seeing what's in the barrel, what you say is in the barrel, what's in the vineyards that you say is in the vineyards, and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's brave of you to wade into French waters where there's a lot more sharks, let's say, if that's the metaphor.
Yeah. And we do, anytime that grapes come to the winery in California, of course, the most important thing that happens for the ability for us to bottle any wine as a Russian River Pinot Noir or Treehouse Vineyard or whatever it might be is the very first document that comes with the grapes. If we don't have that, and it's not legible and it's not written out the way it's supposed to be, then the credibility of the product is lost. And so, and in France, it, you know, here I think it starts there, and that's really important. And I think that there's, you know, there's traceability beyond that, but there, every step of the way, it's a really, really tight system. And so, making sure that all the ducks are in a row is really important.
Julian, I want to thank Wine Warden for that question. That took us down a big rabbit hole, but we have another one from my buddy Eugene here on the East Coast, who says, are the Burgundy wines you buy ever blended with a percentage of your American Pinot?
Absolutely not. Yeah,
I knew the answer too.
there are very, very strict guidelines that dictate what can and cannot happen. And the regulations in France are really it's heavily regulated, which at first seems, you know, like a burden, and it seems like it might even stifle creativity, perhaps even. But the more you get to know it, the more you realize that they're in place to protect the consumer, right? Because
Right, from fraud.
they have it figured out where, you know, when somebody sees a pomard on the label, that is that's in a way almost the brand, right? It is going to produce a certain it's going to hopefully represent a certain type of wine, and a Bon Premier Cru is going to produce a different type of wine. And so we're not allowed to blend any wine from village to village
All
at all.
right, I think I know what he was thinking. I'm just imagining that this is taken the wrong way. I think he was wondering if you do make any blends apart from the Burgundies
Mm.
in your portfolio that might be a marriage of the two.
Oh,
It would probably have to be some
oh,
declassified, California,
yeah.
Love Fest blend, not without any appellation from either place.
The answer to that is no. We haven't done that yet. There's been jokes and there's been thoughts and things like that and what ifs, but no, we haven't done that. I mean, you know, we have the really, you know, incredible 4 barrel blend that, you know, it's a California appellated wine. Up until 2020, the only wines we made were from California. And then once you start introducing Burgundy and Oregon, all of a sudden it's like, well, what if you wanted to put a barrel of, you know, New Saint George into your 4 barrel blend? Like, well, it's like, well, then it's not a California wine anymore. It's I don't know what it is. It's not a wine from the United States anymore. Like, there is no appellation for that. So I don't know what you'd call it.
Right.
But I think that people have done that. I think maybe Penfolds has done some blending of, you know, Shiraz and some American wine as well. So they've done it before.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Julian, let's grab the Bon Premier Cru.
Mm-hmm.
You ready to move on or not? Are you
Let's
still
do it.
love,
Oh, absolutely.
you're
No,
sticking with the Pomar, huh?
yeah. No. I was grabbing the bone. I think the bone is really the Bon Premier Cru is phenomenal. I think this is the wine this year, at least this year, if not every year, is probably the best wine of the lineup. It is Premier Cru, so, you know, in case, you know, the system again, it's about their system over there. Over the years, and we're talking hundreds of years, they have identified the best plots within the appellation of Beaune to designate as Premier Cru. And not every village has Premier Cru, not every village has Grand Cru. And for example, Beaune does not have any Grand Cru, but it has a lot of Premier Cru. And so this is a wine that is assembled only from Premier Cru vineyards, and it's an assemblage of multiple Premier Crus, which is why we don't designate a specific plot or a specific vineyard. But this wine is truly extraordinary. It's, you know, it's just got this beautiful bouquet. It's got, you know, for me, what makes the difference between a good wine and a great wine and a great wine and a phenomenal wine is always what's happening in the palate and the way it feels, because a lot of wines can smell good, but the way a wine tastes is a lot harder to achieve, and it's almost a little bit harder to describe too, but it's something that you feel and you know it right away. And this is an example of that.
That's beautiful. Beautiful and vastly different from the
Yeah,
first.
again, yeah, totally. Yeah, you know, I'm getting like red fruits, lemongrass, a little bit of like a slight herbal undertone. This wine is made with a fair amount of whole cluster. I like using whole cluster on the Bone Premier Cru. I think bone wines from Bone tend to be a little juicier. They tend to be a little bit more round, and I think that the whole cluster gives it a little bit of structure, makes it a little firmer, and allows it to kind of stand up taller. And I think that this wine is really, really nice with the whole cluster. It's not a whole cluster that is noticeable, but when you know it's there, you can recognize that, oh yeah, there's a little bit more structure on the wine.
Julian, for my friends out there who don't know what whole cluster means, can you de-geekify that, please?
De-geekified. All right, let's do it. So most wines are made by separating the berries from the stem, and the berries are what's fermented and the stems are discarded. And whole cluster is when you ferment the whole bunch. So instead of taking apart the stems and the grapes, you're putting the whole bunch in the fermenter, and what happens is, obviously that's green material. It's often lignified, which means that it's kind of turned a little bit woody. And when you're throughout the fermentation process, you're extracting some of that physical, the molecules from the physical structure of the cluster into the wine, very, very slowly, very, very gently. But if you overdo it, it can really produce a lot of tannin. And so Pinot tends to be a very fair, very delicate wine, and oftentimes it doesn't have a lot of structure. And so integrating some of the whole cluster into the fermentation allows it to have a little bit more structure, a little bit more, a little bit more of a firmer texture. So, yeah, it's something that we do here at Kosta Browne also, but sparingly. Over time, we have discovered that certain vineyards, work better with it. Some reject it outright. Some clones work really, really well with whole cluster. And so therefore, it's something that you just learn over time. I would even say through trial and error. You do it one time, you're like, oh, wow, that worked out really well. And you find over time, hey, this is consistently working well on this plot of land. Other times you realize it's not consistent, and it's better to abandon that, because if you're not going to get a consistent result, then better not to do it.
All right, Julian, I'm getting the poke from the timekeepers. We should move on to the last two wines, because I think we could do this for hours. I could sit here and drink these. Although I'm dying to go to the fridge and grab some cheese right now, man. It was so nice to get Comte involved in here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nuit Saint-Georges.
Nuit Saint-Georges. So Nuit Saint-Georges is on the northern end of the Côte d'Or. So you have the Côte de Beaune and you have the Côte de Nuit. And Côte de Nuit is the northern part of the appellation, the region, I should say. And Nuit Saint-Georges, this wine is very unique. It's very different, very, very different from the other three. And it's very typical of the region. The wines from Nuit Saint-Georges tend to be a little bit more, a little bit more robust, a little bit more rustic. There's a pretty strong, I would say like a little bit of a mix of like a earthy component, mushroom, along with like almost like a dried meats component. So like it's a really, really complex wine. There's also some blackberry and some bramble. And so there's a really broad spectrum of flavors on this wine. And then you taste it, it's really soft, it's really deep, it's light too somehow. So it's got this like deep, broad, light feel. It's a really, really fun wine.
It's wild because there's a chalkiness to it that is more Cru Beaujolais to me than Perg. It's like, but in the nose you're expecting this massive hit, and then there's a ton of acid. It's really, really, it's a beautiful juxtaposition, I think.
Yeah, it's really neat. Again, the terroir is really evident in this set of wine so far, and this wine is, these wines from the Côte de Nuit, they tend to be a little bit more kind of broader, a little bit more, they can be a little bit more. This example, I would say at least, is more rustic. But it's such a beautiful wine. It's really cool. It's a wine that really you could sit down and enjoy. And, we haven't mentioned this Pinot Noir, very dynamic with food. This could stand up to a lot of different cuisine, really, really fun to play around with that one in the kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, Julian, when I host a lot of wine dinners, when I'm given the freedom to create the menu with the chef,
Mm,
I'll beg for a second course to be a fish sauced in a certain way to pair with a high acid, low tannin, beautiful Pinot or Gamay. Like, so you add like, you could Bourne Noisette or capers, mushrooms,
yeah.
tomatoes, anything like
Oh,
that that
man.
will anchor it
Yes.
to red wine just to blow minds. Because, even though I would imagine a lot of people who are our friends on this call know that red wine and fish are fine together, there's still people who are shocked. They
Yeah.
want permission to drink red
Yeah.
wine with fish. But,
Ah,
you know,
this would be beautiful with that, with a
this
nice
can, this can go
sauce.
with anything, man.
Yeah,
Anything in either direction.
totally.
Really beautiful.
I mean, a steak frite with béarnaise sauce. I mean, that would stand right next to it.
Yeah.
Sing the whole
Only we
night.
were, if only we weren't 3,000 miles apart, I'd say let's go to
I
dinner right now.
know. Well, we'll make it
Balthazar.
happen.
Um, okay, and then
Really nice. Very complex.
and then in the tradition of great Burgundy tastings, we're going to go to the Chardonnay last.
Yes.
Beautiful Chablis.
Chablis. So, Chablis, gosh, I don't know. It's just amazing sometimes to reflect on the fact that we even produce a wine from Burgundy. And then again, we're producing a Chablis Premier Cru. It's amazing. And this wine is so cool. I mean, I have vivid memories, wine, I think enthusiasts like us, I think always, we've probably all have had our mentor, right? Our person who has shown us and helped guide us into this world that we now exist in. And, I certainly did, the predecessor winemaker at Casa Brown, Nico Cueva, he was the one who really showed me what wine could be. And my first Chablis Premier Cru that he showed me was the Chardonnay that really kind of blew my mind. It says, oh, wow, this is a whole another world that I did not even know existed. And, Chablis is a great wine. It's ubiquitous in terms of like it's it's character in terms of it represents Chardonnay, right? I mean, it is the only white grape that's grown in Chablis. It's a style that's emulated all throughout the world, but there's just something you cannot find in any other wine unless it's from Chablis, and it's that minerality, that oyster shell, that it's restrained, but it's just so layered and deep, and it just kind of teeters on both edges of just having so much to offer, yet it's like it's almost tough to pull it out sometimes, and then the more it opens up, the more and more beautiful it gets.
Um, Shout out to Nico Cueva, who I remember meeting you two together, for the first time years ago. And I remember
Yeah.
you telling me the Chablis story. My one of my many mentors in the wine world, I would say, it's Kevin Israeli from Windows in the World. I worked for him for almost 3 years and got to taste some of the most amazing wines in the world. But it was his excitement and dynamism to get us excited about wine and to understand the differences that really changed everything. What's interesting though is from the time I met him in 1990 to today, there's so much Chardonnay backlash that you have to constantly fight back and say, you know what, if you're having a Chardonnay issue, start with Chablis. Let's reboot with
Yeah.
Chablis and see they've been making it there since 1180, I think we could date it back to, and see
Yeah.
how they were making it originally. It's not an oak bomb, it's not blah blah blah, and it's not where you're served at every corporate event, wedding, after
Yeah.
hour, happy hour party. You're getting a $10 Chardonnay that's just presses all the buttons of oak, toast, butter, biscuit, blah blah blah.
Right.
This is the real deal, and so I'm so happy when you guys um, sent this to me this week. It took all my strength not to drink it before today, so I'm glad to have it here. Cheers, Julian.
Cheers. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. It's such a gorgeous wine. It's all about finesse. It's a very finesse wine, elegant, restrained, but layered. It's like yeah, it's beautiful, really, really beautiful. And again, 2022 was a great vintage. and Chablis as well. And Chablis is, it's geography. Uh, in terms of its orientation, it's actually about 45 minutes to an hour away from Burgundy, from the Côte d'Or. So it's separated by quite a distance. So their vintages can actually be quite different, and they could suffer from a severe hailstorm while the rest of Burgundy did not. So 2022 marked a great vintage for Chablis. The whole region in general just produced a lot of knockout wines, and this is one of them. So and we're really pleased. This is our inaugural release for the Chablis Premier Cru.
Beautiful. I have to do some due diligence here, Julian, and talk about preferred member pricing. If you become a member and you get on the list and you could have an allocation next year, you'll save incredible money. I believe that all 4 of the reds are $90 for members, but suggested retail is $130, so you save around $40 on those.
Yeah.
And $115 for the Chablis, you can get it for $70 as a member, which is pretty ridiculous for this quality level of Chablis.
Yeah. So our preferred member pricing is a system that we have because we do sell the majority of our wines direct to consumer. So we have a really amazing supporting membership that that we sell our wines to, but they do get the best prices, and that's something that we don't really market a lot because we do sell some wines in select restaurant and retail, not all of them, but some of them. And when they do find their way to this, the nice bottle shop around the corner or like a nice restaurant, it's going to be a lot more. So yes, while some of these wines are available outside of the membership, you'll be paying a premium for it. And so that's really a great reason to become a member and to purchase these direct. So
okay, and if you are a member, the allocation is open today, closes October 3rd. If you are a new member, you can get in there for next year. Julian, I want to thank you for letting me co-host this tasting with you and talk about the amazing work you're doing in California and Oregon, now in Burgundy. And I look forward to continuing the conversation as you keep making great wines.
Thank you very much, Anthony. My pleasure. And again, right back at you. Thank you very much for joining us. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Cheers, everyone. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you. Cheers.